Okay, so let's get started. We're going to be taking a look in this training module how to set up an advanced style rally anti-lag control. This is specifically learning how to integrate an anti-lag valve into our exhaust manifold and controlling with a 4-port, allowing airflow to be directly injected into the exhaust manifold to rapidly spool the turbocharger. This is the best way to work with a rally style anti-lag. Now, we talked about some of the basic fundamentals in that last tutorial, doing a basic style rally anti-lag. This would not be using an anti-lag valve. That was purely just using your idle control motor to allow more airflow in a lift throttle situation, retarding the spark and cutting fuel so that we had increased exhaust mass flow. And then the turbocharger would spool up when we're in overrun lift throttle conditions. We come back on the throttle. The boost is going to be ready for us. So that's going to be the general operation of rally anti-lag. So when we're talking about now the advanced control, this is now integrating another component to the system. So we have a 4-port boost solenoid that allows us to control an anti-lag valve. Let's take a look at that real quick here in the beginning of the training module. Now, this is going to be working with a TurboSmart anti-lag valve assembly. I've used these on quite a few projects and they work extremely well and they're reasonably priced. So looking at this, we're going to find the general idea behind an anti-lag valve. It's going to take off your charge pipe typically, it's going to take compressed air, boost, it's going to run it into the anti-lag valve. And then coming out of the anti-lag valve, there's a special flange where we have to have a standoff, a mini runner to each exhaust manifold runner. And what it's going to do is when we open up the anti-lag valve and allow it to flow the compressed air into the exhaust manifold, it's going to pump a ton of airflow into the exhaust. And because we're having really late spark and we're cutting fuel or spark, that'll create a late combustion effect. And effectively, we're going to control the combustion out into the exhaust manifold, into the turbine housing, and really rapidly increase our exhaust mass flow, which will spin the turbine wheel faster, which spins the compressor wheel faster and allows us to generate a ton of boost pressure when we're in lift throttle conditions. That's the key here. Normally, if we're in lift throttle, we have not much air mass coming into the engine, so the exhaust mass flow really reduces. Lower exhaust mass flow, slower turbine speed, less boost or no boost gets built. So by going in here and using an anti-lag valve, we're essentially coming up with a way to inject boost pressure directly into the exhaust manifold and create a late combustion effect. It works extremely well, and it get rid of a lot of the drivability problems that we find when we're doing a basic rally style anti-lag. So when you're coming on and off the throttle, you can get kind of a pushing effect going on because we're using either drive-by-wire throttle plate opening, or we're using some type of a throttle stop opening, or we're using our idle control motor to have a controlled airflow bleed, trying to drive up our air mass coming into the engine, to drive up our exhaust mass, what's actually getting burnt and sent out into the exhaust manifold. We're having that increase in air mass when the anti-lag is active. That creates a lot of times coming on and off the throttle, kind of a pushing or lurching effect. And it's definitely a little unsettling. When we're using an anti-lag valve, it gets rid of a lot of that lurching, surging type of effect that can go on. So this is the best way to go about controlling things, but it does start to add some cost and complexity to the system and to your vehicle. So you have to be mindful of that. Mechanically, you have to add it all in, but it does work extremely well. So we can take a look here just at another picture from TurboSmart. This is going to be the 4-port boost solenoid that we're going to be controlling from the link that's going to allow that anti-lag valve to open specifically when we're calling out the conditions for it to start to work. So the 4-port solenoid is going to have 2 wires for control. One wire is going to go to a key on 12-volt source. The other wire is going to be low side pulsed from the link. Now, taking a look at the solenoid, there's an in and out on one side of the solenoid. So the in is coming from a compressed air source, usually the intake manifold. Then there's an exhaust or an out from the solenoid. That's a vent. Then we have 2 ports. There's an A port and a B port. When we energize that solenoid, that's going to give the boost pressure to the anti-lag valve to open up the valve to allow the boost pressure that's coming into the anti-lag valve to go and get injected into the exhaust manifold. So it's a really basic type of mechanical system, but it works extremely well. And obviously now you understand how this works. we want to see how to integrate it here with the link. So let's take a look at the programming side of this and just see the strategy for making this all work. We're going to move from our fuel page right here, and let's use our drop-down layout and go all the way down here to our rally anti-lag option. Now in here, we need to turn on a bunch of these tables and talk about our programming strategies. So let's look at this first. We're gonna go here to our anti-lag mode and go from off, and we're gonna turn this to on. Now when we turn this on, it's gonna ask me to wanna go ahead and zero out values in the table and set axes values to default. So we're gonna say yes for all of this. Let's just click yes. And we're gonna find that we have tables starting to appear in here. Now the one thing I wanna mention, and we ran into this in the last tutorial, was we wanna make sure as you're turning on these tables here for control, that under your anti-lag fuel cut table, you have anti-lag fuel cut actually populating in the window here. We can see anti-lag ignition trim table showing anti-lag ignition trim, fuel trim is showing fuel trim, and ignition cut is showing ignition cut. So these tables here are all present in the correct windows. Sometimes when we turn this on and the tables start to populate, they aren't going to display the correct table in the correct window. So that can be confusing. So we want to make sure they're all good and they look good. Again, we ran into that last tutorial and I showed how to work around that. Seems like when I open it up now in the software, there's no software quirks going on, so this all looks good. Thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here, and you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.